The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was alive with voices. Species from across the galaxy gathered, each dressed in their traditional robes, armor, or strange shining suits. Every corner of the vast chamber glowed with banners of 100, civilizations all meeting to decide on peace, trade, and war. Among them walked Leora, a young alien diplomat from a peaceful world known for its calm seas and soft skies. Her people were gentle, trained in negotiation and soft words rather than war. She had been chosen to attend the council for the first time, her heart filled with both pride and nervousness. She adjusted her long robe and walked slowly, her eyes darting from one group to another. She saw reptilian warlords arguing with insectoid traitors. She saw tall, crystalline beings humming in low tones. The place was overwhelming, but nothing made her heart race as much as the thought of meeting a human. Humans were rare here. They had joined the council not long ago, and rumors about them spread like fire. They were called Deathworlders, survivors of a violent planet where storms, predators, and harsh elements shaped them into dangerous beings. Leora had heard the stories. Humans who fought wars with reckless courage, who smiled in the face of death, who made friends with enemies and enemies with friends. To Leora, these stories were frightening. She imagined humans as savage, wild, and unpredictable. When her supervisor told her she would sit near one during the summit, her hands shook for hours afterward. As she stepped into the hall, she tried to calm herself. She told herself it was only for observation. She would not need to speak with him. She would stay polite, quiet, and distant. Then she saw him. He was taller than most around him, broad-shouldered with short dark hair and a steady gaze. Unlike the colorful robes and ornaments of other delegates, the human wore a simple uniform, plain and practical. He was not decorated with jewels or glowing metals. Instead, there was a badge over his chest, a symbol of his people. His eyes swept across the room, calm and sharp, noticing everything. When they landed briefly on Leora, her heart leapt into her throat. She quickly looked away, gripping her. Notes tighter, she told herself not to be foolish. But when she sat down, fate placed her seat just 2 chairs from his. The council began with the usual ceremonies. Speeches filled the air, languages shifting from one translator device to another. Leora tried to focus, but she felt the presence of the human beside her like a storm cloud waiting to break. Others whispered too. She caught fragments. The human representative, "They say his people fought off 3 invasions without allies. They do not fear death." The more she heard, the colder her hands grew. She dared to glance at him again. He was silent, listening, his arms folded loosely. There was no aggression in his posture, no wild anger, yet something about him carried weight, as if violence lived just beneath the surface, ready to awaken. Laura's mind argued with itself. Was he dangerous or simply different? The first debate of the summit began. 2 factions argued over resource rights, their voices rising louder and louder. The crystalline beings tried to mediate, but the reptilian warlord slammed his claw against the table, nearly breaking it. The hall filled with tension. Some delegates leaned back, others shouted for order. Leora froze. She had practiced her speeches, studied her world's policies, but nothing had prepared her for this chaos. Then, the human stood, his voice cut through the noise, low but firm. "Enough," he said. The reptilian warlord glared at him, teeth bared. "And who are you to silence me, savage?" The human didn't flinch. "Someone who has seen war. If you keep shouting instead of talking, you'll bring it here. No one will win." His words were plain, blunt, lacking the flowery style of most diplomats. Yet silence followed. The reptilian huffed, but sat back. Leora's eyes widened. It was rude, even shocking how he spoke, but it worked. The storm had calmed. Her heart pounded. She felt torn between fear and something else she couldn't name. Respect, perhaps. Admiration. Later, when the debate ended, she gathered her notes. Her hands trembled slightly. She could feel the human's presence still beside her. Though he had not looked at her directly again, she couldn't stop thinking about him. When she walked out into the corridors of the council hall, her thoughts spun. She had come expecting a monster, someone savage, brutal, terrifying. Instead, she had seen someone who controlled a room with only a few words, someone who seemed both dangerous and disciplined. It unsettled her even more. That night, in her guest quarters, she replayed the moment in her mind. The way he had spoken, the steadiness in his eyes. She remembered her fear, yes, but also the strange pull she felt. She wrapped herself in her blanket and told herself it was nothing. It was only curiosity. Tomorrow she would focus on her duties, keep her distance, and not let the human distract her. Yet deep down, Leora knew something had already changed. The next morning, the great hall buzzed with restless voices. Debates would continue, and the air was already heavy with tension. Leora walked slowly, clutching her datapad to her chest. She had promised herself she would stay calm, but her stomach twisted when she thought of sitting near the human again. She entered the chamber, and there he was, sitting in the same place as before, his eyes scanning reports, his posture relaxed but alert. He seemed unaffected by the storm of emotions that swept through the hall. When Leora sat down, just 2 chairs away, she felt her skin prickle. She forced herself to focus on her notes. The first debates began, smaller topics of trade and travel. Leora listened carefully, sometimes writing down her thoughts. But soon, the real trouble started. 2 powerful factions faced each other again. One demanded more access to fuel-rich systems, while the other refused, claiming ancient rights. The room filled with sharp words, then shouting. The crystalline mediators tried to calm both sides, but failed. Leora's heart beat faster. She was supposed to speak for her world, to add her calm voice to the storm, but her throat locked up. The reptilian warlord slammed his claw against the table again, his growl echoing across the chamber. Then, without warning, the human stood. "Stop," he said, his voice steady. The room went quiet, eyes turning toward him. He broke protocol. Only, the chair of the session was supposed to speak out of turn. Leora gasped softly. "You're wasting time," the human continued. "Arguing like this only drags your people closer to war. If you truly want peace, then talk about what each side can give, not what each side will take." Some delegates muttered, offended. The reptilian narrowed his eyes. "You speak out. Of turn, human. This is not your dispute." The human didn't back down. "Conflict between you will become everyone's dispute. I've seen what happens when anger rules. I won't stand here and let it spread unchecked." The council chair, an ancient being of light and shadow, considered his words. Instead of punishing him, the chair nodded. "The human representative has spoken out of turn, yet his words are not empty. Let both factions speak again, but with focus." Shock rippled through the room. Humans were still seen as outsiders, yet here the chair allowed him a voice. Leora's chest tightened. She should have been horrified by his bluntness, but instead she felt something else, relief. Where others used flowery language, twisting words until they lost meaning, the human cut straight to the truth. As the debate restarted with calmer tones, Leora risked a glance at him. He was silent now, arms folded again, but his eyes watched everything. Later, when the session ended, Leora walked out into the corridor. She needed air. Her thoughts whirled. Her people taught her that protocol was sacred. Breaking it was a crime for a diplomat. Yet the human broke it boldly, and instead of disaster, he brought peace to the room. She leaned against the wall, her hands trembling. "Strange day, isn't it?" The voice startled her. She turned and saw him, standing just a few steps away. Her breath caught in her throat. Yes, she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. He gave a small nod, not moving closer. Sometimes words get twisted. Sometimes you just have to cut through them. I know it wasn't polite, but it worked. Leora opened her mouth, then closed it again. She wanted to say many things. How his actions frightened her, how they also impressed her, but her voice refused. He studied her for a moment, then gave the faintest smile. Don't worry. I won't bite. Her cheeks grew warm. She quickly looked down at her datapad, pretending to check notes. I should return to my quarters, she said, her voice shaky. Of course, he replied simply. He turned and walked away, his footsteps calm and steady. Leora stood frozen, her heart racing. That night, in her quarters, she replayed the moment. She scolded herself for being clumsy, for acting like a frightened child. Yet she also remembered his tone. It wasn't mocking, only straightforward. He had spoken to her as if she were equal, not weak. The next day, the council met again. Leora took her seat, once more near the human. This time, she dared a glance before the session began. He was already there, reading reports, expression calm. During the debates, she noticed something new. Whenever tempers rose, other delegates glanced at him nervously, as if waiting for him to step in. He didn't always speak, but his quiet presence seemed to press on the room, keeping chaos from breaking loose. When a smaller argument broke out between two minor delegates, Leora surprised herself. She spoke. Her voice was quiet but steady, reminding both sides of their shared goals. To her shock, they listened. Her hands shook under the table, but she kept her face calm. She felt his eyes on her, just for a second. When she risked a glance, he gave the slightest nod of approval. For the first time, she felt proud rather than frightened. As the council dismissed, Leora left with her head higher. The whispers followed her again. The shy diplomat spoke today. Was it the human's influence? Perhaps she has more courage than we thought. In the quiet of the corridor, she allowed herself a small smile. Maybe she had learned something from the so-called savage. Maybe humans were not just terrifying survivors of a cruel world. Maybe they were also teachers in their strange, blunt way. But deep down, another thought stirred. She had felt his eyes on her. Not just watching as a diplomat, but something softer. She shook her head quickly, trying to dismiss it. No, she told herself. It was impossible. He was human. She was not. They were too different. And yet, as she walked back to her quarters, her heart whispered a truth she didn't want to face. She was not only less afraid of him now, she was drawn to him. The council chamber was quiet now. The great debates finished for the day. The halls emptied slowly as diplomats and aides drifted back to their quarters, their voices low with exhaustion. Leora walked alone, her steps soft against the polished floor. She told herself she would head straight to her room and rest. Yet her thoughts were restless. All day she had felt the human's presence nearby, steady and calm like a mountain she could not ignore. Her people had always taught her to avoid danger, to keep distance from anything wild or unpredictable. And yet here she was, walking in, the same corridors as the human, secretly hoping she might see him again. As she turned a corner, she nearly collided with him. "Careful," he said, his voice steady. Leora froze, her heart racing. The human was standing there, datapad in hand, as if he had been reviewing reports while walking. He stepped back slightly, giving her space. Forgive me," Leora whispered, lowering her gaze. "No harm done," he replied simply. His tone carried no anger, no mockery, only plain truth. For a long moment, silence hung between them. Leora's throat tightened. She could walk away, return to safety, but her feet would not move. Instead, she heard herself speak. You were bold today," she said softly. Again, he tilted his head. "Bold or reckless?" "Both," she admitted, clutching her datapad. "But it worked." Your words cut through the shouting. A faint smile touched his lips. "Sometimes it's better to face the fire than to let it burn out of control." She blinked at him, surprised by the calmness in his words. Humans were said to be loud, hot-tempered, quick to fight. But this one spoke like someone who had already seen too much fire, someone who had learned to master it. Her fear eased slightly. She dared to look at his face, strong, lined by discipline, yet softened by something she couldn't name. "Do you always speak like that?" she asked before she could stop herself. He gave a small shrug. "I speak as I am. Nothing more." Laura's cheeks warmed. Her people used careful, poetic words in public, always dancing around meaning. But he stripped the words bare, leaving only truth. It unsettled her, but at the same time, it fascinated her. Another silence fell, but this one felt different, less heavy, more curious. He glanced at her datapad. "Your people's records are detailed," he said. "I saw how you handled the trade dispute earlier. Quiet, but sharp. They listened." Her chest tightened. "You noticed." "I notice everything," he said simply. His words struck deeper than she expected. She lowered her eyes again, her hands trembling slightly. For years she had been overlooked by stronger, louder voices. She was the quiet one, the shy one, the background diplomat. Yet here was a human, the so-called savage, who had noticed her effort when no one else had. She wanted to say thank you, but the words tangled in her throat. Instead, she whispered, "I was only following my duty." "Duty," he repeated softly. Then he gave a slow nod. "Duty matters, but so does courage. You have both." Her heart beat faster. She wanted to argue, to deny it, but part of her wanted to believe him. The hallway was still quiet, the lights dim as night hours approached. Finally, he stepped aside. "I won't keep you. Good night, Diplomat." She hesitated. "Good night, human." He gave a short nod, then walked away, his footsteps fading down the hall. Laura stood alone, her heart racing, her thoughts spinning. She had been afraid to even glance at him days ago, yet now she had spoken to him, even shared a few truths. That night, she lay awake in her quarters, staring at the ceiling. She told herself it was nothing, just a brief encounter. But deep, inside, she knew something had shifted. The next day, the council resumed. Leora entered the hall with a strange mix of nerves and anticipation. She saw him already in his seat, calm as always, and for the first time, she did not feel only fear. During the debates, she noticed the way others reacted to him. Some avoided his gaze, some whispered behind his back, and a few openly glared. They all saw the human as a threat. But she remembered the quiet moment in the hallway, the steady voice, the small smile, the way he had said she had courage. Suddenly, she saw him differently. When the session ended, Leora found herself walking slower, waiting until the human left so she might catch a glimpse of him again. She scolded herself for the thought, but her heart betrayed her, and fate answered. In another corridor, far quieter, she saw him again. He stopped when he noticed her. "We meet often," he said, a hint of humor in his tone. "Yes," she whispered. "Perhaps the council walls are small." He gave a small chuckle, a sound warm and unexpected. "Perhaps." They walked side by side for a short distance, the silence between them less sharp now. She wanted to ask him about his world, about what shaped him, but her shyness held her back. Finally, she whispered, "They call your people savage." He glanced at her. "I know." "You don't seem savage." His expression softened. "Sometimes survival looks like savagery, but not all of us are as the stories say." Her chest tightened again. His words were not defensive, only honest. When they reached the crossroads of the corridor, he stopped. "Until tomorrow," he said. "Until tomorrow," she echoed. As he walked away, she realized something had changed forever. Fear was no longer the only feeling in her heart. The day began like any other at the Galactic Council Summit. Diplomats from many worlds gathered again in the Great Hall. Discussions about alliances, trade routes, and security filled the air. Leora felt a strange mix of calm and nervousness as she entered the chamber. She saw the human representative sitting quietly in his seat, eyes alert but calm. No one could predict what would happen next. Without warning, alarms blared through the council chambers. Red lights flashed, and an urgent voice echoed in all languages. "Security breach. All delegates move to safety protocols immediately." Panic spread like wildfire. Diplomats scrambled, some shouting orders, others rushing to gather their belongings. Leora's heart pounded in her chest. She clutched her datapad and looked around, searching for safety. In the chaos, she saw shadowy figures moving quickly toward the council floor. They wore dark armor and strange helmets that hid their faces. The attackers were armed with powerful weapons that glowed with blue energy. The council guards moved fast, but they were outnumbered. Some diplomats tried to run. Others froze in fear. Leora's legs trembled and she tried to stay calm, but she felt trapped. Then, suddenly, the human representative stood. "Stay close!" he shouted, his voice steady despite the chaos. Without hesitation, he moved toward Leora, pushing aside a fallen table to clear a path. She blinked, surprised but grateful. She followed him, her steps quick but unsure. He took charge with a calm she had not expected. Where others panicked, he seemed to know what to do. He moved like a soldier, dodging blasts and protecting those near him. At one point, an attacker raised a weapon toward Leora, but the human stepped in front just in time. A blue energy bolt struck his chest and he stumbled but did not fall. His expression was fierce as he faced the threat. Leora's fear turned to shock. She wanted to help, but she was no fighter. She could only watch as he fought, blocking attacks with strength and skill. His moves were raw but effective. Around them, chaos roared. Some diplomats were evacuating, others hiding. The council chair's voice crackled over the speakers, urging everyone to remain calm and follow emergency exits. The human grabbed Leora's hand. "Come," he said firmly. "We must get out." She nodded, allowing him to lead her through side corridors and hidden passages she had never known existed. As they ran, Leora noticed his determination. He was fierce, like the stories said, but she also saw something else. Care. A fierce protectiveness, not just for himself, but for those around him. They reached a small, safe room, sealed from the outside world. The human leaned against the wall, catching his breath. Leora looked at him, her eyes wide. "Are you okay?" she asked, voice trembling. He smiled faintly. "I will be." She touched the burn mark on his chest. "That looked painful." "It is," he admitted. "But I'm still here." For a moment, silence wrapped around them. Leora's heart raced, not from fear, but from admiration. The human was not just a savage fighter. He was a protector, brave beyond words. "Thank you," she whispered, "for saving me." He shook his head. "We all need help sometimes. You helped me today, too, by staying calm." Her cheeks warmed. She had never been praised like this. Outside, the sounds of battle grew distant as Council security forces regained control. Eventually, an announcement came. "The threat is contained. All delegates remain in safe rooms until further notice." Leora and the human sat together quietly, waiting. She looked at him and saw the sharp contrast to the savage image she had before. He was strong, yes, but also kind and steady. They talked quietly about the attack, about the unknown enemies who wanted to disrupt peace. Leora shared her fears, and he listened without judgment. By the time the council resumed, a new respect had formed between them. She no longer saw him as just a savage human, but as a brave soul with a strong heart. And something deeper had begun to grow, a connection neither expected, but both felt. After the attack, the atmosphere at the Galactic Council had changed. Security was tighter, and the usual busy halls felt quieter, more cautious. Leora found herself thinking more often about the human representative. The savage who had saved her life was no longer just a stranger. He was someone she wanted to understand. The days that followed were filled with meetings, discussions about the attack, and plans to prevent future threats. Leora and the human found themselves near each other again and again, their paths crossing, more often than by chance. One afternoon, Leora sat alone in a quiet corner of the council's garden. The greenery was a welcome change from the polished halls, and the soft hum of distant waterfalls eased her nerves. She was reviewing notes when she felt a shadow fall over her. "Mind if I join you?" the human's calm voice asked. She looked up, surprised, but pleased. "Not at all," she said softly. He sat beside her, the space between them filled with unspoken thoughts. For a moment, they just listened to the gentle sounds of the garden. Finally, the human spoke. "You handled yourself well during the attack." Leora blushed slightly. "I tried, but it was your courage that kept us safe." He smiled, a genuine warmth in his eyes. "Courage is not about never being afraid. It's about acting despite fear." She nodded thoughtfully. "I was afraid of you at first, because of what I'd heard. But now, I see you differently." "And how do you see me?" he asked, his tone gentle but curious. "As someone strong but also kind, someone who fights to protect, not just to destroy." He looked away briefly, then back. "It's not easy being seen for who you truly are. Many expect humans to be savage, wild. Maybe some are, but many of us are more than the stories." Leora reached out, her fingers brushing his hand lightly. "I want to learn more about you, about your world." He met her gaze. "And I want to learn about yours." Their hands stayed close, a quiet connection growing between them. Over the next days, they shared more conversations, small moments of trust. Leora found comfort in his honesty, his straightforward way of speaking. The human admired her calm strength and gentle mind. Other diplomats noticed too. Whispers floated in the halls about the shy alien diplomat and the human representative, spending time together. Some were curious, others suspicious. But Leora no longer cared about gossip. She had found something rare. A friend, perhaps more. And that was worth any whispers. One evening, after a long day of meetings, they walked together under the stars, visible through the council's glass dome. "Do you think this, whatever it is between us, can last?" Leora asked quietly. He smiled softly. "I don't know the future, but I know this moment is real." She looked at him, feeling hope and fear mingling inside. "Let's face the unknown together," he said. She nodded, her heart full. In a galaxy filled with war and suspicion, two souls from very different worlds had found a bond, born from fear, grown with trust, and glowing with the promise of something beautiful. The final day of the Galactic Council Summit arrived with a mixture of relief and tension. Delegates prepared to leave, and decisions made in the past days would shape the galaxy's future. Leora felt a heavy weight in her chest, not from duty, but from the thoughts of the human who had changed everything for her. She found him in the quiet hall before the last session began. He was reviewing his notes, calm as ever. When their eyes met, a silent understanding passed between them. The council chair called the final meeting to order. Speeches were made, agreements signed, and peace reaffirmed. Among the many voices, the human and Leora exchanged small glances, a bond strengthened by shared experience. After the session ended, the diplomats prepared to return home. Leora and the human stood together near the exit, the noise of goodbyes filling the space around them. "Will we see each other again?" Leora asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. He smiled, gentle but sure. "I hope so. This is just the beginning." She nodded, but the doubt lingered. Their worlds were far apart, different cultures, languages, and histories. Yet what had grown between them was real. "I was afraid of you once," she admitted, "because of what others said. But now, I trust you." His eyes softened. "And I trust you. You saw me when others would not." For a long moment they stood silently, the weight of unspoken feelings hanging between them. Finally, he reached out, taking her hand in his. "Sometimes, trust is the bravest choice." Her heart swelled with warmth. She squeezed his hand gently. "Then I choose trust." As they parted ways, Leora felt hope. Fear had turned into understanding, and understanding had blossomed into something beautiful. The galaxy was vast and uncertain, but in this moment, two very different souls had found a connection stronger than fear, proof that even the most unlikely bonds could change the course of worlds.